Okay. So yeah, what we'll get into, first of all, have a quick look at our program again to make sure we're all aware of where we're at and where we need to be at. So semester 1 2020 program.
Whatever I decide to use it in, I'll use it this side is
so
be the same as this side.
on the program it's slated for Wednesday, that is today, for peer checking. But obviously we've pushed back a little bit, and then also next Monday is when we've got our public holiday. So my apologies, I've got to keep sort of working through that public holiday, or on the Tuesday, however you manage your time. But for now, it's going for that block. It's going to be working primarily independently. But what I'll need to ask of you is that once you've got your drawing sets now to a state which you think it is reasonable to have someone check them and provide comment, I want you to email those drawing sets to me. So when you've emailed those drawing sets to me, I have those ones as they are at that point in time. Then I will pair you up to have your drawings checked by another student, and then that's the assessment, is that you have to provide commentary on that student's drawings, and they will provide commentary on your drawings, and you submit those to Learn. So that peer checking. Now, that peer checking, students have chosen to do that in various different forms. In the past, one student I had produced an Excel spreadsheet with a whole list of things and produced their own checklist, essentially, and then went through the checklist and supplied that back to the other student. That works fairly well, except what it doesn't do is it doesn't mark on the plans exactly where. So it has limitations in the communication, but it helps to organise things well and provides a model for similar checking further on. I've had by and large, the majority of students will get a set of drawings and then use PDF Viewer to add sticky notes. So just add the sticky notes, which enables you to put comments, and that sticky note helps identify exactly where that particular issue is. So that's by and large the most common. Other than that, you've got people who might have some sort of like a Microsoft Surface or something like that, and be able to draw on things and add notes, etc. Or PDF viewers or readers where they write notes actually onto the
Can I
drawings.
suggest
Yes.
that it's best to check with whomever you're checking their work, what they actually have access to.
Yeah, that's
Because for me, PDF sticky notes works.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like you could do it on the plan, but I prefer a PDF sticky note. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
And
and potentially maybe I should be providing not just a Revit file, but I should be providing them with PDF sticky notes.
Oh yes. Sorry. Yes. So you're not providing your Revit files. You're providing a PDF printout of your drawing set. So produce a PDF set of your drawings.
Physical or?
Yeah. Or just PDF.
PDF.
Yeah.
Electronic. Because
Yes,
then
electronic.
they can do the sticky notes. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. So that's So I will. Yeah, I'll check for these to come through from you guys this weekend. Now I'm working a lot this weekend as well, so it'll be sort of tying in with that. And yes, but I'll hopefully get people paired up pretty much as soon as you send them through. But please be patient. That might not happen exactly straight away. But that will allow you to keep working through and keep developing your drawing sets before next Wednesday, which is when so Monday is when it was originally slated for this time, but because of the public holiday, we moved this to Wednesday, where we're introducing Project 2. So it's going very quickly. You'll still be working on Project 1. So Project 1 Council submission is not happening until the 16th of March. But I want you to get the bulk of your working and thinking about that project one done before next Wednesday, if at all possible, simply because that makes it easier for you. So after that, we'll still be doing some checking, building some check, all that sort of stuff, but then introducing project 2 and getting you to think about project 2. So now or coming up next week is the time you start multitasking on having a couple of concurrent projects as well. Like invariably you'll have. So the duty of care quiz, that's another. So you can complete that at any point in time. So that's task number 7. That's a quiz that relates to occupational health and safety. It's yes.
Very, very simple. You read the document and then you do it, and you will work out exactly how to do it and how quickly you can do it once you've read the document. Okay?
Yeah. So it's working. Yeah, it's working through. Yeah, working through the document. It is. Yes, it is. That is a quick one, and it's not. Yeah, it won't hold you up at all for your project. So. Next thing we want to be having a look at. So,
embedding files in this in the thing, because the thing is that there's a couple of things like this bushfire report that I've got to do. I've also got to have all of those reports that you provided, and they somehow or another should. Are they to be embedded in the Revit file, or do they actually get source?
Okay, so your reports that you have to add in terms of the bushfire report and solar panel information, they can be provided as separate documents, and I don't mind if they're provided as separate documents. Or if you wish, you can. It takes a little while longer to do this, but if you want to set yourself up with these things, it can be a handy thing for the future to produce bushfire notes in Revit and have those notes to be dropped in. So that's primarily what happens with a lot of drawing sets, working drawing sets now, is that a lot of general notes are brought in, and you have your cache of general notes there in Revit as families, and you bring those in specifically to the projects when you need them. So that's the way that working drawings are evolving now, from being predominantly drawn elements to having a lot of notes embedded. And there are pros and cons about that. But in terms of efficiency, and also because of the way Revit works, it can be very quick and easy to have a whole lot of general notes populated and then just be dropping things in. Now that takes time to build up. So at this stage, if you want to take the quicker option in producing separate reports, that's fine, and I'll accept both. In terms of the sustainability, you can also produce a sustainability report, or it may work well for you to produce a sustainability sheet, or embed sustainable aspects and notes within your other drawing set. Depends if it gets too cluttered doing so. So that's going to be your call, and I'll have some input in that when I check over your drawings to see whether you're allowing adequate space for that, for that or not. But if it's simpler, quicker, and easier for you to produce a separate report for sustainability to say these are our solar panel requirements and projections and usages and the system that we recommend, plus this is my insulation, these are the other aspects I'm adding. If you want to do that as a separate report, that you can, and that's what's mentioned in the procedure document, or you may want to...
Can you just set up a new sheet?
You can just slap a new sheet, and that way you can have drawn elements and then link to those drawn elements, and you can import bits and pieces. So Revit is one of those things that enables you to import a lot of stuff into it. Hence, that's the reason we have that evolution of drawings, working drawings, to incorporate a lot more text now than what they used to. Because if we think about it, when I was studying, we were doing stuff by hand and stuff on AutoCAD. you know, sorry, so you guys don't study hand drawing, so
I
so
studied.
You studied hand drawing, yeah. Well, you
I
could.
passed on 2001.
Right.
Well,
so yeah, so
actually did them.
yeah, and
I
you
actually
did as
did
well.
1 year of an apprenticeship, and I actually did hand drawings in 1983, and it was just lovely.
Yeah, except when you're writing.
Uh,
Like, that was a big bugbear for me. Like,
There used to be templates
yes,
for the writing.
yes, I know you use lines and you get them all to the right slope, and then yeah. But the thing is, if you look at a modern set of drawings, okay, what I'll do is I'll bring this. We're digressing just slightly, but where's my examples?
Progression makes
I thought I had some examples right at the bottom. Yeah. Okay. What do I have? So that's in project. Where do you want? Maybe industry standard instructions. Rightio. So we'll be looking at these things a little bit later anyhow, so it doesn't hurt to get them up. Now, so if it's even looking at that title page there, the degree of writing on that. Now that sort of thing within Revit, AutoCAD, super simple. Type away, put it like that. To do this stuff with hand drawing, to be writing out that lettering, is incredibly time consuming. And then if we go down to, you know, seeing some general notes embedded on drawings like this, can you imagine how labour intensive that would have been back when we were doing hand drawing? Whereas, and then with AutoCAD, not as quick and easy to produce lettering as it is in Revit, but still, you know, still much easier than hand drawing. So we've gone through that progression of drawings being primarily drawn elements and creating, you know, producing that information, and then other sections of notes and specifications all typed up on a typewriter. We've gone from that through to what we see now for a lot of working drawings, where general notes are just dropped in. Now I think this drawing set most likely has pages of general notes further on. It's taking a while to load up. But what we typically see actually it might, no, it'd be down the end there. But it's taking a while to load, but typically what we'll see is we'll see drawing sets, we'll see notes specific to those drawings dropped in there, but then we'll have several pages later on of general notes. Things that are primarily just about protecting the drafter and the architect from anybody saying, well, you never mentioned that, hence, you know, like safety aspects or material substitutions or all these sorts of things. So you have general notes for this sort of thing, and they're typically on a range of sheets at the back. So there's a whole lot of general notes, and that's the way that we're heading. There's a lot more text coming into drawings today. So in terms of the what you want to produce for your sustainability and for your bushfire, I'm happy with you to have that all in your plan set, because that's the way things are going. You can also produce it as separate reports. And if you are to include them in your drawings, you can include them generally in your drawings, or you can set them up as separate sheets as you suggested.
Now, the sustainability report, should we just base that on the one that you have supplied?
No. So that sustainability report that I've supplied, that is a comprehensive, It's a building energy analysis. So that's what you're going to get whenever you go for building rules consent for a building. Well, there are two options. One option is that you follow the National Construction Code to the letter and you do the deemed to satisfy in terms of having this amount of insulation here and meeting all the criteria in the NCC for that. Or you can, and energy ratings don't cost very much because it's a fairly simple process, or you can get an energy rating done on the building. And you can that process, you can base most of your decisions based on what the NCC recommendations are anyhow, and you'll find that energy rating just sort of flows from there. So that's what you've been provided with. That property in Birkenhead, that is an energy rating report, and that is a very comprehensive energy rating report. I'm not expecting anything near that degree. What I'm expecting is the 5 aspects that you spoke about in your consultation in regards to energy efficiency, the things you want to consider, such as water tanks, etc., explain then in your report to say, we've included this, it does this, we've included this, it does this. Primarily, your energy rating report, the contents of that is going to be made up with your solar panel recommendations. So you're going to go on, use the solar panel calculator and recommend a system to the family, and that will, and from that solar panel calculator you can produce information about what the usage is, how many panels, etc. is required for that.
And where do we get that usage figure? Because that usage figure, when I was using the thing, I mean, like I just whacked in 14,000 because it's like, I think that the average is about 16,000. That a couple with no kids, you know,
Yeah.
I just thought 14,000. I probably only use about 9.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I just went with the averages of an average house as opposed to anything, you know, complex.
Yeah. So well, you've gone about it the right way. So you can get those average energy usages per household from sites like CanStar Blue, or if you, in fact, I think there's also a state government page that has information about average energy usages for household makeups as well. So from your client consult, you realise, okay, it's two couples with no children. Determine what their average energy usage is going to be, and do that. But also, another thing we have to think about in design is not always, well, primarily we have to think about the client who we're designing for at that given point in time, but they might sell that house. And that's also good value for your client, is if that house is designed suitably and systems are designed suitably to cater for any other people most likely to use that house. So we've got a 2-bedroom house. You know, our usages are not going to be a family with 4 kids or even a family with 3 kids. You know, it's going to be either couple, no kids, couple, 1 child, or a single person. We're limited to fairly small numbers. And so if you pick somewhere in the middle there and base your analysis and your recommendations on that, you can't do it better than that. So happy with that. So, got to open up our procedure document and have our discussions around that. So, develop models to meet your requirements of, and so that models so we're talking about plans. So we're showing diagrammatically all of these aspects. So contours. So contours are given to you. Yep. Materials. So you're going to have to include materials on your plan set. Typically, your materials are going to be shown on your elevations. That's where you get to look at the face of the building and the roof of the building both at the same time. That's your opportunity to express most of your materials that are being used.
Annotations and stuff like that.
Yes, and so exactly. So annotations, leaders.
Which ones?
And for your materials.
Penetrations.
Annotations.
Annotations.
Annotations such as leaders on there. But also incorporate noise control. Now we can talk about noise control on our elevations in terms of double glazing, which is going to be one of our better or most effective approaches at noise control. But otherwise, we can express this on our site plan as well. And energy efficiency, well, we'll be expressing that on both our site plan and on our elevations.
Okay.
Your bushfire attack level information, so that, as I mentioned before, can go in a separate report, or it can be embedded within your drawings. And then information from your development plan, well, that's embedded within your drawing set and your design. So for your cover sheet, you'll want to do a 3D view of the building, of the premises. So that's something you'll actually, although they're in this order, that's probably one of the last things you'll do in terms of your camera, locating your camera once you've got all of your, once you've got your model pretty much completed. That's when you drop your camera in there and get a good 3D view of the building. Now you can show that in context. You can decide. You can be creative there and decide how you show that. Things that you will have all the same are client's name and contact details. So you don't know their phone number, etc. I don't want phone numbers expressed on there, but I do want property address, etc. So, well, project title and site address. So yeah. So your project title is going to be new build, 174 Shepherd's Hill Road, Bellevue Heights, and then put your details there as well. So drawn by, etc. And then you'll also want to have your sheet schedule on that cover page. So they're the basics for your cover sheet. But quite often you'll see that cover sheets in drawing sets are also the location for general notes. A couple of reasons for that is one, they don't, like the cover sheet sits on top, so there's a greater chance that those general notes are going to be read by everybody who looks at that drawing set. But then also those notes are quite often non-drawing specific. So if you were to put your general notes on the lighting plan, for example, then there's a whole bunch of people that will never get to see those general notes. So you want them to be in a neutral space, either on the cover sheet or as separate sheets at the end dedicated to general notes. Beyond that, any other notation you want to add, it has to be specific to that drawing.
And I mean, that cover sheet, I mean, like, that's where you can just basically say, draft have slab construction of, load-bearing construction as per AS1 684.2. That's what
Yes, exactly. So yeah, so all timber framing as per AS 1684/2010. Residential slabs and footings as per AS 2870, etc. And steel framing,
Steel framing or timber framing?
Yes, exactly. So yeah, so what you do, or what will probably be populated already for you within the drafting office, is these general notes specific to various forms of construction, and you'll make choices as to, okay, with steel frame dwelling, we're adding these notes and etc. But you might also want to be adding mention of your wind speed on there. Typically, what I do on my I don't typically have a cover sheet on my drawing sets. I'll start off with a site plan, but on that site plan or that entry drawing, you have a table on there that says wind speed, certificate of title, development plan for local council. So you have those things on there. And then also you might have site area and building footprint on that little table as well. But just some general information. You may want to include that general information on your cover page as well. The reason you do that is because that general information is useful to a lot of people. So for the council approval, they'll want to see that title reference, that allotment reference, and they'll want to see site size and
just think up the things.
Building footprint.
Just go, look, I really want to tick this off. All right, she's got that, she knows that. I mean, things like title, they really should be actually citing them, but ticking off. But that title reference, that enables anybody who's looking at it to uniquely find that place. You know, if we're doing a new build, it might be lot 1 Johns Road. Now there might be 3 or 4 lot 1 Johns Road. And we might not have numbers, or typically we don't have numbers associated at that point in time. But if we put a certificate of title reference on there, then that narrows it down specifically to that particular property.
So council can go ISCT 5386-832, that place. And putting the site area on there is handy because there might be some constraints they have that relate to site area, such as water tanks. I mentioned council has detention and retention water tank requirements based on your site area, and it says you need this size tank based on the area of your site, right? So they can go look at that and go, okay, you need 2,000 litres retention, 5,000 litres detention. There we go. Building size, you want to have that on there because the fees for development approval are based on the size of your building. You don't want them going there, going, oh, okay, buy the things and doing that. They'll go, otherwise they'll go, oh, it's about that. Yeah. Now, you make it easy for them. They go, 136 square metres.
Do you have to include your garages and outbuildings in that?
So typically what I really like and what I do is I provide separate. So I've got a floor area, and then carport area, and then veranda areas and porch areas. Separate them out like that. The main reason I like that is the work that I used to do for the state government was determining what's called an equivalent area for a building. So all your rating and taxing isn't done on the actual size of your floor plan, it's done on what's called equivalent area, whereby the area of your floor plan counts for 100% towards that, and then your porches and verandas are 25%, so 25% of your veranda area goes onto your equivalent area, 33% of an enclosed garage, 33% of a carport goes on there, 66% of enclosed garage goes on there, etc. So you have people who do that for a living, determining, well, as part of it, they do a whole lot of other things in that job, but they ascribe equivalent areas to buildings as well.
So you can actually recommend to someone that they have an open carport for the very simple reason that they want to keep the rates down. How much does it cost in real terms? I mean, tens, hundreds.
That's far too random, really. I think for you to make any decent decisions or recommendations upon.
Right.
Really? Yeah, because you will have what do they call, property officers determining a rating value or doing analysis and comparison based on equivalent areas. That's one of the aspects they use. But the biggest determinant of their value determination for your rating and taxing is going to be your build cost. So if you put in a build cost of $220,000 and they already have a site value there of $100,000, surprise, surprise, probably your rating and taxing valuation is going to come at $320. Now, although, look, it's actually much more random than that and quite a bit more complex than that. But yeah, the whole thing about trying to diddle based on something like that, I wouldn't bother. Yeah, short answer. But it's great to get all that summary, all that information on your property shown on that, either that cover page or site plan, whatever's coming first. Then the next thing here we have site analysis plan. So that site analysis plan, I typically refer to that as a locality plan. Look, you can call it what you will, or either one of those two. You want to show, the most important thing is showing that building in its context. So there are no hard and fast rules necessarily about a site analysis plan or locality plan, because at the end of the day, it's about showing that building in its context and what's important to it. So for one building, it might be really important to show that there is a divider in the road, because you know that the site is only going to be accessed from a vehicle from one direction and then exited from another direction. Whereas other roads, they can turn straight into that allotment either way. There's no divider in the road, and it's not a busy road.
Can I just ask, with that site plan that you've given us, should we be exploding that and actually replacing the elements? So, for instance, if I've got a brush fence that's 1.2, we explode that thing, the lines, and replace that brush fence, whatever, with a, with, you know, colour bond, whatever it is.
Yes, yes, you should. Yep, yep. So pull
Is
it.
it compulsory to change the fence?
No, it's not compulsory to change. It's not compulsory to change the fence. The reason you might want to change the fence is because you can't build a house within 3 metres of a brush fence. So
Or
yeah,
privacy.
yes, or privacy. That fence. Had you mentioned? Was it you mentioned how tall it was? But yeah,
Yeah,
but it's
I have
short,
an issue. I
yeah.
don't think it's actually an issue,
Yeah.
but, because of the way the site's.
But that's a
located.
1.18 meters of height, I guess, on the back side, and the other side is 2.5 meters, so it's, I guess.
Yeah, so
manageable.
yeah, and if you don't think that's an issue and you don't think that's important to
If I can
recommend to your
demonstrate a
client, yeah,
sightline, if I can demonstrate that there's no sightline between the neighbours and myself.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, or that I have covered off on that with foliage from my building, you know, sort of like, it may be sort of like that additional information on the location plan around sightlines. Where would you like that information?
I wouldn't delve that deep in this project.
Right, okay.
Yeah, to be frank, because given the topography of this and the location of the neighbours, overlooking is probably. I don't see an issue with overlooking.
No.
You don't want to flag an issue if there's not one there.
Right, okay.
For starters, yeah.
See, because whatever or whichever fence is existing, it is on the sharing basis, right, with the neighbors. So if you want to change that fence, so we will be needing the permission from the neighbor as well.
Yes, you do. Now, for the purposes of this project, you know, let's keep it quite simple. Let's assume that your neighbours are amenable to replacing the fence. I think in most cases they would be. Now, whether they want to come to the party, go 50-50, that's another matter. But it's also not a huge expense in the scheme of things. And there's going to be a whole heap of disruption with building a new house, and there's going to be machinery on site and all that sort of stuff. But doing this fencing, it's probably a good time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the location of the neighbouring house, they have a vested interest in getting rid of that brush fence. Because they've actually built almost bang on boundary.
Yeah.
So there's issues like that.
Yeah.
I would be expecting them to come to the party because they're actually more at risk than I am.
Yeah. But I think let's keep this project really quite simple. Like, you guys are coming up with some excellent, like, insightful things to think about. I think in the main, keep it simple.
So does that locality plan, can that be as like a screenshot of from Google Earth on the plan and then trace it around it, or like, are we?
Yeah, I think it's better to actually, well, you can draw your plan based on Google Earth, so you can import an image and then draw off of that. But I'd suggest that you get rid of that image.
Yeah.
Once you've drawn over it.
Yeah.
For the simple fact that once you print those pages out, if those are going to be printed out in black and white, it's a mess. Yeah. So plan for that. Think ahead as to what's going to happen with this drawing set.
But but we're not like, we don't so much need any measurements of like anything too accurate of the surrounding. Because there's a house here, the road's there, there's a dividing like traffic, and just general terms of everything outside of that site.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So all you have to do is paint that picture to convey the information that is important.
Yeah.
Because we're not. Because we're not measuring off other houses and things like that, we don't need to dimension anything. And where you don't need to dimension anything, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Because you never want to lock yourself into information which you don't have to provide, or information which you might not be able to back up. So if you're just scaling off Google Earth, it's not to scale. Yeah, even though I've done stuff and I've done stuff off Google Earth and then been within 100 millimeters of doing it. Don't rely on it. You can't. So so it's only ever indicative.
I've kind of done it just for the exercise. I've done it. Obviously, I would expect a surveyor to be doing that work. But I have actually done it just to do the demonstration of what it might look like.
Yeah. Yeah, and what we're looking for is fairly simple representation of what's there as well. We don't want to clutter our drawing. We don't want to make it too complex. We want to keep it fairly simple because we want to show where the water main comes in. We want that to stand out. We want to see where power lines are, stove poles are, and things like that. We want to stand out.
Where they are from information about, do I?
Yeah. So
Location.
yeah, location is safe.
Location
Yeah,
is safe. Okay,
yeah,
location
yeah.
is
So have a play on that. So you want to get your services in there. I think it's a great thing to get your entry and exit directions on there, and then to show that there is that divider in Shepherd's Hill Road, and to show that it is a dual carriageway. I think that's important information. What's vital information is where the edge of that road is in relation to your neighbouring buildings, and where they are in relation to where you want to put your house. Because basically, council are going to want to see, and I apologise for those watching this at home, so we've got 3 allotments there, we've got a house here, your house there, like that. Council are going to do this and go, hooray, if your house is back here, they might say no. So,
Why can't we keep frontage?
what's that?
I mean, why can't we keep frontage or maybe front distance more than whatever is on the neighbor side?
Well, now it is a grey area, and I just made a really simple representation of that. But let's say minimum setback is 10 metres, and both of these places comply to that minimum setback of 10 metres. And you can say, well, it's a minimum setback, I can set mine back further.
Yeah.
What council might say is that what you're not doing is you're not continuing that line of buildings as, you know, I can't think of the language they use, but they like to see homogeneity of frontages along the streetscape. Yes. So they like to have that uniformity of streetscape. So that might be a no. But if we're doing that, that's pretty much a definite no.
Yes.
Yeah. Poking out. But and look, I think the activity in doing a locality plan and looking at those buildings, I think it has a lot of application in real life. I've used it before to argue for a house to be set further forward on allotment, simply by doing this. But I did it over a larger area and drew a line from the front of all those houses to say, look, yes, the relationship is this.
Yeah.
And argue that with council, and that's that adds a massive amount of value to that block.
They also don't like it too even, so you can sort of.
And you can and typically within the development plans and the Development Act of 2016, there's explanation of that, to what sort of percentage you can allow some articulation of that. So it's a good exercise to do, and something that you probably today won't be the last time you hear about doing this. So site analysis plan, neighbouring structures, most important, services. So have a look where the sewer line goes, have a look where the water comes in on SA Map Viewer. Show vegetation, so show approximate sizes of trees. You do your Google Earth or Map Viewer image, scale it up, trace off them. Fencing and shadows. So that, for that, so you've got to, let's have a quick look. I have to remind myself. We do. So on that locality plan, that's where you're going to be doing your sun paths. Or you can choose to do it as a separate sheet. For this project, shadowing and overshading is not an issue. we're doing a simple residential detached house with, plenty of space around it and around the neighbours. Overshadowing is not going to be an issue, but it is a big issue when you start doing compact development. So project 2, we're dealing with an existing building. Once again, not really an issue because it's an existing building, we can't change it. Project number 3, very big issue, overshadowing. Doing a tall building in the city and it's new. So, but if you end up working for developers who are, like in the sort of McGill Tranmere area where they've allowed 150 square metre allotment sizes from the original sort of housing trust allotments there of 1,000 square metres, and developers are rushing into overshadowing is a massive issue. So, yeah, of neighbours and. Yeah,
so do we actually have to show some solstice and wind, like different times of the year?
Yes.
Okay, so
yes.
It really realistically can't be all on the same plan because you need different.
Yeah, so it can be on the same plan if there's one particular time or so which is going to be an issue. So you can make a decision about, okay, at this point in time, it's an issue, or at this point in time is what the council, the neighbours will be concerned about. And you want to show that at that point in time, still it's not an issue.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, if it's just a general thing, then you do several years, summer solstice, winter solstice, and equinox, to show the two extremes and then what it's like in between. So, site plan, you want to keep your contours on there, except for where you've put your driveway or your building pad or something like that. You want the contours chopped out from that. You want to show your setback, and dimension. Typically, what you want to do on a site plan, and I apologise for those at home who can't see this, but we've got a site plan here, we've got a building happening on that. You want to dimension only twice to where that building is. We don't want to put another dimension here. Do you know why?
Because we've always got one dimension, we know what the length of the house is, so therefore we know what it is.
Yeah. If we put two dimensions in there, then essentially everybody who reads those plans have the information to get whatever answer they want from that, because they know the dimensions of the house that's on the floor plan, they know the dimensions of the block, and we are this far from that. We don't want to go putting a third one on there, because if the fences aren't where the boundary, where we've said the boundary is, and there are issues like that, we might get people dimensioning off here instead. And then other people dimensioning off here, and there being a discrepancy somewhere in there.
I guess a room in the middle of the house is half the size of it.
It's like, the concrete slab isn't meeting up. So you don't, always try not to put too much information on basically the thing to convey here. And just think, okay, have I provided enough information for people to get to an answer? Yes? All right. Step back. North indicator accurately placed on plan. Well, Revit does that for you as long as you do you set up your project. Yeah,
the thing about sort of like positioning of the building that's off kilter. With the site, you want it directly positioned north-south. But with the actual site, with the actual building plans and stuff like that, can we take the dimension? Can we take the north indicator off it altogether? Because the thing is that it aligns the wrong way. Because I've realigned the house.
Yeah.
Turned the house around, and I've actually sort of like taken it to an angle. Not 90 degrees to the north, not 90 degrees in terms of sort of like the north. I don't want to. I'd rather indicate no north than have a north angle indicating like that, and the house sitting here, because you can see it on the site plan.
Yeah. So.
Because my house is not sitting north south.
Yes.
It has to sit. slightly at a different angle, and my north-south indications need to be sitting at exactly that angle, you know, for my visuals from the house.
Yeah, so what we're talking about there is Project North and True North.
Correct.
And and aligning Project North and True North. Basically, what you want to do is you want to have in your drawing set that your building is sitting there, they're square, and it's all dimensioned. But if you set it up correctly, Revit should attribute that north arrow for your site plan and your floor plan correctly, as far as I understand. Has anybody had issues with that, or not had issues with that, or
We've got a guru over this.
no answer to that?
Well, you don't have to show a north arrow on every like page. If you're showing it on like the site plan that shows the orange, or do you need it on every?
You should have a north arrow still on your floor plans.
No.
What I've always done as drawing practice is on any plan I have a north arrow, unless it's like a kitchen plan or bathroom plan, something like that. Then north arrow doesn't matter, because because that context is expressed in a larger drawing from which that is taken. I guess essentially floor plan is like extension of the site plan in that way as well. But I've always had north arrows on my plans, except for the small detail ones.
So actually maybe a simple way to do it, which is actually put the north arrow in after, not before.
Well, with how it's set up now, that if there's a Project North and True North, when you put a north arrow in, it will go to True North, even though that page is sitting in
Exactly, and I'm just wondering, so it will always go to True North?
Because Revit knows what True North is, and it knows that page is in Project North, but if you put a north arrow, it goes to True North, but your page still stays Project North, so your house is square.
Right, yeah, I'm just going to go to my floor plan.
And even another easy way around it is you can just figure out the degrees from your house, a point on your house to north, and then draw a line. If you have to make your own north arrow.
Yes,
Like we know what it is on the.
Just do annotation and just create your looking rather than your symbol, like because oh no, hang on, no, if you put it in afterwards, I've just put it in afterwards, and it's holding. Let's have a look at what it does on the sheet itself.
But that's actually probably not. That's not actually pointing north, because that's just pointing.
Project North. It's not. It's pointing. Just do that symbol again. That points north there. That's pointing north there. True north, but it's certainly pointing north. Because the thing is that you've got your floor plan, which that is your north face, even though it's not. So do you want the north symbol to be orientated to the to True North all the time?
I want the north arrow to be the same across all of your drawing sets.
All right. So
unless it. So several options. One is you can put in a site plan. If that site plan doesn't fit properly with your north arrow facing up and you have to make alterations, you can put a north arrow facing another way and then put a note saying that north, please note north arrow differs from other sheets.
Or just put in the degrees.
And you want to put that in the box. Don't put in the degrees.
Okay.
Because people don't need to know what those degrees are.
All right.
Secondly, you don't want to provide any information that,
No.
So,
I'm getting you.
Yeah.
Brevity of information is everything. Let's not get too tight.
Like, because it's these ridiculous little things that might get pulled out at one point in time if there's some conjecture about something.
So you've actually placed it 1 degree a little bit that way, just in the build. It's just happened to sort of come in 1 degree a little bit that way in the build, and someone can kick off.
Chances are that's not going to happen. But but you don't want to go supplying information you don't need to.
Right.
That's the basic rule, and I think that's a really good rule
something
too.
along the lines of house offset to capture the north side.
Oh, certainly. So if you're supplying information to an energy rater, they will want to know how many degrees off north you are.
Right.
And you might supply that to the energy rater because, yes, you need to supply that, right? But if you don't need to be giving that to the energy rater, if it's just about talking about how much your north arrow is off of north on your site plan, no, nobody needs to know that. And yeah, and obviously you're not always going to make those decisions correctly, right? You know, and I don't expect people to make those decisions correctly, but as a general rule, if it doesn't need to be there, don't put it on.
Right. So just enough,
Yeah.
just enough to tell them
This
is orientated north, but it's not quite north really.
Yeah, so what you do is you just put on that note saying north, on this plan, north differs from other plans. So north arrow differs from other plans. Put that in a box so it stands out. What's that?
From true north?
Or we could say north arrow differs from true north. Be aware. Yeah. Yes.
In the planning approval, maybe the sheets which we need to give it to the council, sections are also needed, right?
Typically they're not, but let's have a look at this. Yes, so for this one, yes, do. Yeah, 2 sections.
So the sections we need to give it with the full details of the roof structure?
No.
With the installation and everything?
Okay, yes. With your sections now, for those of you that are doing building approval as well, you're doing building approval as well, aren't you? Oh, you're not, that's right, sorry. But you two are doing building approval as well. You'll probably want to look ahead and see what details you need to do for your building approval. You've got an ease detail, etc. You might want to start adding more information there.
So that is for the building approval, not for the plan?
Yes, yeah. So for building approval, you need to put in detail. Beyond that, for planning approval, you want to be indicative only.
Okay.
As a general rule, what you'll be doing with your sections, with your model, because as soon as you drop a section line in there, you'll see there's not actually all that much in this model. It's pretty, it's pretty bare bones. You'll be doing detail lines from there on, and you might even be scrapping stuff as well. So you might make that decision to, I don't want to show this because that slab thing is not right and there's erroneous information there. You might want to hide it in view, and just rely on detail lines. But one thing I don't want to see you doing is drawing the trusses in accurately and the nail plates and things like that. The reason you don't go drawing the trusses in accurately and the nail plates in like that, well, actually, why don't we do that? It's information we don't even know.
Yeah, someone else's responsibility to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Someone else is going to do that, and they'll supply all that stuff. So you just put in like an indicative W, right, your web, like type B truss. That's it. And show that so it's enough information for someone to see. Okay, it's a trussed roof, but it's single lines, which says this doesn't tell you information about where those webs are.
In terms of looking at the internals, it might not even be a truss roof because at the moment what it's showing is a raked skillion on 2 sides almost effectively. The raked skillion look at least. So you don't know where it's going to be, and that's not a truss roof.
I can't remember whether it says truss roof in the specification or not. I think it is, but right. Yeah. From memory, it's a truss roof. So we looked at site shadows. So site plan. So north indicator. So get our north indicator now. I think we've spoken about that enough. Contours, dimensions, site setbacks. Site access and egress from roadside and around site. So drawing driveways. I think it's good to. Now I can't provide you with any help really about doing those building pads and sloping them and things like that. As far as I understand, it's really quite simple, but I'd encourage you to just have a muck around with it and find some instructional videos on YouTube if you can't. But from my understanding it's actually fairly simple doing that, creating those driveways, etc. and those slopes. But have a muck around with it. But I apologise, I can't. I don't know specifically how to do that. But yeah, get things like driveways in there and carports in there and trees and vegetation and landscaping and things like that. Say which trees you're removing and which trees are being kept. And then floor plan. Okay, floor plan fully dimensioned, and this is probably the most picked up upon thing that I do with floor plans is dimensioning, because for this house it's really awkward. Like, dimensioning is not fun anyhow. You're lucky you're using Revit and not earlier drawing programs, because Revit's so much better. But there's this whole bathroom section which is all sort of really busy and really clunky with this. I don't mind if you drop a couple dimensions in there to take some information out of the dimensions further out. That's fine. When you're dealing with something like this, it's got a whole lot going on in that centre bit. Sometimes it works for you to get some dimensions in their own separate place within that floor plan. That's okay. Typically you don't do that. You avoid doing that and you keep everything in your dimension lines around the edge of the building. And also with a floor plan, we're looking at a floor plan, like let's imagine that thing that I've drawn there is a floor plan. Everything up this side of this dividing line goes in this line of dimensions. Everything this side of this dividing line goes that side of the dimensions. And you start from the inside and work out so that the outermost dimensions on your floor plan are the ones that relate to your overall dimensions. We'll look at that a little bit more later on today. So you want overall dimensions, wall openings, external doors and windows, room and wall thickness, internal rooms and wall thicknesses, door clearances. What we always do with floor plans is we dimension the framing. So we're not dimensioning the plasterboard, we dimension the framing. So I don't want to see dimensions of 110 millimeters, because I can't get studs 110 millimeters wide.
And what about the same with the exterior? Do we include the cladding or only still do?
So exterior is once again to framing only because it's cladding straight on the framing. If it were brick veneer, well then you do go to the extents of the cladding. Window and door tags, wall construction. Now you can mention that, or you can have a little wall construction tag as well. Select appropriate standardised windows and doors. So for anybody not familiar with that, I'm pretty sure within the product specification section here, I've got a Stegbar standard-sized doors and windows, but you could just type that into Google now. Type in Stegbar standard-sized doors and windows, and you'll get a table showing that standard-sized doors and windows. Elevations, so 4 elevations: north, south, east, and west. And be aware that on your procedure document, on that information about that property, your north, south, east, and west is going to end up going to be different than what's expressed on their elevations. Typically, I always call my elevations elevation 1, 2, 3, 4, and then have elevation indicators 1, 2, 3, 4, rather than lock myself into this is north, south, east, west elevation.
Yeah, because it's not actually directly from north, isn't it? Be looking at the corner of the house, like I find it a bit confusing here.
Yes, yeah. And you don't know if that floor plan is going to get used on another project. And then if it does, if you're using that. Yeah, or if you've got to go, let's rotate that, and it was northwest originally, now it's northeast or a bit more east. Yeah, if you number them, then there's still elevation 1, 2, 3, 4. Doesn't change. So either way, you want to do that. There are pros and cons for adopting things. So that's your elevations. Also on your elevations, that's where you're expressing most of your materials. You're saying colour bottom roof and Hardie's fibre cement sheet cladding, etc. to the building. Sections. So your roof structure, that will be shown indicatively, like I said, with your W web. Wall structure. So that's where you get to put in your annotation saying that it's 90 by 35 timber framed walls. So take all this information directly from your specification that's in your procedure document. Floor structure, well, that's going to be simple: concrete, slab on ground, and internal materials. if you're going to be sort of specifying anything there. 3D view, so one of the outside, that might be the same one you put on your cover sheet, and then also 2, including cycling tools, and 2 internals, including furniture. So drop some furniture in there, etc. So sustainability sheet, so position on block, solar panel, solar requirements and panels. So as I said earlier, you might include this information on your site plan or something. You might embed this in other plans. That's fine. You might have some embedded in plans. You might produce a report to go with that. You might produce a completely separate sheet. Either way, we just want to be seeing this information. And I want to see other information that you've mentioned in your consult about what you're doing with that building in terms of double glazing, insulation, all that sort of stuff. So door and window schedule, appropriate label of doors and windows, and then so your solar panel report, supporting selection of panel type and number, and then your fire safety report. So establish fire zone for this address. That might be something you put on your little table at front. See development plans below for location, etc. Yeah, don't go through that. And summarise into a report the construction aspects required from NCC and Australian Standard AS 3959. So that's made fairly simple for you by that summary. Yeah, so that for floor systems, posts, external walls, windows. Let this be your checklist for what's required there. And then any additional requirements set up by council. So some things by council you will have come across already. Other things by council, they might specify things later on. With the planning approval subject, I keep it really quite simple in this regard. But when you get to building rules consent, the thing that's embedded into that subject is that you have to make amendments after notification from council. So for those doing building approval, I'll get you to do all these details and things like that, and you send that through to me, and the private certifier is saying, no, you've got to make some changes to it. So planning approval is pretty easy for you. I don't really make you include all the little bits and bobs, but later on you will. But there'll be some things you'll add on there. Yeah, completed application forms, copy of council requirements and fees, and then PDF for sheets are specified for 80K. Oh yes, okay, yeah. So that's all about sheets. So yeah. So that's the checklist of what you're producing. And now for your peer checking, I'm not expecting you to have your solar panel and bushfire stuff done by that stage, right? It's mostly, well, you're going to get most value out of other students peer checking your drawing set. So that's what I want to see, is that drawing set ready to go for checking. Yeah, look, if you're taking too long to get to that point of checking, if you're really stressing about it, don't worry. Get them to me anyhow. I'll pair you up, and it just means there's going to be a bit more red pen or sticky notes or whatever on your drawing set. It's really not the end of the world. We're starting out. Yeah.
So as far as like the bushfire attack level report and sustainability, that can just be scattered throughout scattered as notes throughout the document where, like for example, on a sheet that shows the deck, there's a note there relating about the bushfire attack level for that, or does it need to be a separate thing that relates back to it?
It's better actually if it's a separate thing.
Okay.
For bushfire notes. The reason for that is because the private certifier is going to read all those bushfire notes, and if they're scattered throughout, that's going to make it really hard for the private certifier, and you don't want to make things hard for private certifier because then they might miss some things, and then they'll get you to add a bunch of stuff which you've already got in your drawings.
Yeah.
So you do want to bundle it together, and I suggest bundling it together on your front page. That's not always the approach you take for everything, because typically if there's construction details, tie downs, all that sort of stuff, you're going to make that specific to your timber framing, or if there's something specific to your deck, you'll make that specific to your deck. You'll have in your bushfire notes things like deck to be non-combustible, or sorry, timber to meet table F from AS39. 59, and then framing and stumps to be non-combustible. So you have that general information. Then on your plan or your elevation that's showing the deck, you'll specify specifically, steel uni piers, 50 by 50, and black butt decking, etc. 70 by 20 or whatever they are.
So we just have to do some research and find the products that meet the BAL level.
I suggest you do. Yeah. You don't have to. Now, technically, this is just planning approval, and I don't want to go. I don't want to set the bar too high. I like to set the bar down fairly low because we've got a lot of work to get through. But it's really good exercise for you, I think, to have a look at all this stuff. And the more really good, accurate stuff you've got on your drawing set, when you go to an interview, the more impressive it will be.
Yeah, and it's not considered like doubling up information. If we've got in our notes it's saying, oh, the posts are to be non-combustible, blah, 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 and then on the plan it's specifying specific products like that's not doubling up.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. And also you might review which product you go with. You might not go with Unipiers, and you might go with something else, right? But that won't change your other notes. If you change it here on this plan because you've gone with a different product, there's still going to be non-combustible.
Yeah, cool. And that translates again to the sustainability side of things, where you have your general notes, but then also on an elevation, this maroon double glaze window proves it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so you get more specific.
Yeah.
And it's always going to be a toss-up and a bit of a choice as to how specific you get and how much information you want to include.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, you might want to change. You may actually want to change from one type of material to the other. Or you may want to have sort of like steel framing in the area where you've got a deck, but you actually don't want to go with steel framing in the building. So there might be things like that. And it's like, at the first point you said, X material. If you say X material, you're locked down to X material. But if you don't, I suppose you could always have engineers sort of like re-specify or whatever based upon sort of bushfire. Or what about specifying to meet non-combustibility standards, posts to meet non-combustibility standards? So a general statement of, because this is planning approval. At building approval stage, I need to be very, very specific. But at planning approval stage, I'm not necessarily going to knock myself down.
Yes, that is a very important thing that you add. That if you start specifying products and finishes and all these sorts of things, you start getting really specific about things at the planning approval stage. You lock yourself into that because, you say yes, we're using black butt, right? But then you might end up going spotted gum because there's a special on spotted gum or something you can get it a lot cheaper. Chances are the council are never going to go, oh, that's spotted gum, not black butt. But technically, if you said it's going to be black butt, that's what you've got to put there for the council.
As well as which, when you go to your insurer and you've got something that's not actually on the plan, all of a sudden you haven't created an insurance problem until such time as your house burns down and it was spotted gum, and that made no difference.
Yeah. So yes, do be a little bit aware of going over the top with specification of things. Now I'm encouraging you to do it, and because what you're producing is you're producing a portfolio, and for interviewers that look at this, they're going to go, yes, this person knows their stuff, right? So part of what you're doing here is to is to impress and produce a nice, lovely drawing set, and the other part is to just meet the basic requirements and then to learn as much as you can. Beyond that, in practice, in real life, you're going to have to make those decisions about whether you put stuff on your drawings or not, whether you want to lock yourself into something or not. And yeah, and you're always going to have to make decisions about, like, so for a house I put in for about a year ago, I already knew specifically what the product would be, what the brand was going to be. I knew what it would look like, but rather than say this exact brand and this particular thing, it was like fibre cement sheet, natural grey colour. That means I could go with BGC, CSR, or Boral. You know, either one of those three, I can get that same type of thing. So that's not going to be an issue for insurance. It's not going to be an issue for that planning approval if I get a cheaper supplier on something else. But it does. Yeah. So you're always going to there's always going to be things you have to make decisions about what you write about. But just be careful of writing anything like this or similar, because then the ball is in someone else's court to make that decision.
But if you sort of like back to like with the deck sort of thing, like you specify, these are to be a non-combustible like product, then can you leave that up to the builder to choose that product within the parameters you've specified, and then you don't actually have to specify a specific like brand and product on your plans?
Yes, you can. Okay. Yeah, and there are many benefits in that, but it's good to also be aware of the risks in doing that as well. But the important point is, yes, combustibility. So if you've covered that, and if if it's non-combustible steel framing, then your builder can.
But in the materials, it is written that what kind of materials they are going to use.
For the main house, yes, but not for the deck.
So then, for the deck.
Yes, yeah. So the majority of this project for specifying your materials, it's going to be straight from the specification. So read the specification and put that in there. But then when it comes to the deck, you've got a bit of free play, you've got a bit of choice. You can make some choices.
Yeah.
So the electrical plan is needed for the planning approval?
No.
Yeah, because
no. So what I've got here. So I've put these plans on. Here it is in industry standards and instruction. So right down the bottom of that, I've got example plans for you. Now, I've mentioned that before. These are really, where are we? So these are really detailed plans. I'm not expecting anything to nearly this degree. If I was, we'd get halfway through project one to the end of semester, and we're back next semester to finish project one. Like, I'm not expecting, I know some of you might be guns and you might just be punching it out really quickly. But I don't expect people are nearly anywhere at this level. But why set the bar down there for examples? So
I'm just thinking another way to express that business is, say for instance you want black butt. Could you say black butt or alternative that meets the following, requirement, non-combustible or combustibility in the range of X?
Yeah, well, you can say hardwood timber to meet to be selected from table F AS3959.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean that works better for me because that's not all similar.
No. They could. Yeah.
It is an objective measure of the key quality. Yeah. Yeah, you can definitely you can do that, and that's what you do in your bushfire notes. And in your bushfire notes, you'd say timber to be selected from this thing, but then on your plan or your elevation, you might actually specify something else. And the reason you would specifically specify something else is because if you just say hardwood timber to meet table F AS3959,
your builder might go, oh yeah, sweet, I can use my bow, that's $6 a metre, great. And your client who's very environmentally conscious, like goes, oh no, another section of Malaysia got chopped down my deck, I'm not happy about that. You know, yeah.
So you've got to work around all of the things which are parameters which are going to be fixed, and then provide a parameter which is, you know, spacious enough to. Because the thing is, what happens then if your client actually says, well, no, actually, I want steel in there. The client comes back and says, no, I want to change that to steel now.
Yeah, well, then you make changes, and look, and there's no look. You're never going to have
100%.
you're never going to have 100%. You have general rules to live by
Right.
that get broken.
Good. Got it.
And and I think we'll be talking about that a lot with our talking about various different plans and things. So, yeah. Where are we? So. Now, what we have, yes?
Can I leave?
Yes,
I mean,
that's...
Is there anything important you're talking about?
What we're talking about now is we're talking about AS 1100, which is the drafting standard for architectural drafting. So we'll go through that, but yeah, look, we'll go through that quickly because, yes, it's an Australian standard, but yeah, it's not an Australian standard. If you produce drawings that don't comply with that standard, they can still get assessed for planning and building approval, right? It's not but also not everybody abides by everything that's in there, and it's fairly old. Anyhow, so we'll be talking about that, and then we'll be talking about some things to do with working drawings, revision clouds, and having a look at some example plans. I'm recording this lecture. Hopefully the sound is recording well, and you'll be able to look over that later on and have a look at all your plans. So that's okay. Yeah.
I can leave.
You can leave. Yeah. Either way, not a worry. So, quick look at AS 1100. So, Australian Standard 1100, as with all your Australian standards, we've got 0.301 and there's point blah 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 for all your different other drawing types. So this one's for architectural drawing. Some important things to I guess to note from this are drawing conventions in terms of referencing things or for doing door swings or sections or something like that. The reason for that is you don't want them to be misinterpreted, particularly for doors and windows. You want, like that's absolutely essential. I'll see if I can just scroll through to find the door and window swing section. Here we are. So absolutely essential you get this right because, and this is a really odd thing, that there was a difference between Australia and New Zealand in how the door and window swings were shown decades ago. And I think that's, I find that a little bit crazy. But it used to be in Australia that it was showing the other way, that it was pointing toward the hinged side, away from the latch side. Now we're the same as New Zealand, which is hinge, latch, hinge. And that is vital, because that's how you show a door or window swing on a plan.
That's how you make sure people...
Well, on an elevation. Sorry, that's how you show it on an elevation. How you show it on a plan is an arc.
Yeah.
But that's an important thing not to get wrong. So obviously bottom hinged, so hinge, latch, hinge. Top hinge, so an awning window, hinge, latch, hinge, like that. That's something very important we have to agree upon. Some things that we don't look. This is your guide, your recommended scales for things, but this is something you've got a bit of free play in. One thing you don't have free play in is the scales. How to say it? you can do a site plan at 1:200 or 1:500, but you cannot do one as 1:250. I don't see 1:250 mentioned there. Now you might also do a site plan 1:100 for like a tiny little block in which you're doing a cubby house or playground or something like that. Sometimes 1:100 is going to be suitable. But what you cannot do it at is 1:150 or 1:300 or something like that. So we stick to our standard scales, going from 2,000, 1,500, 100, 50, 20, 10, 5, 2, 1. And that's what we stick with. For general abbreviations, etc., yes, handy, but if you're providing abbreviations and then a table of abbreviations, look, you can step outside these bounds a bit. And also for your graphical representation of things, obviously everybody steps outside of these bounds all the time. Like toilet in elevation, nah, I don't see them drawn like that, or in plan, I don't see them drawn like that. You know, so people definitely make up their own symbols and representations of all these elements. So this is something which is non-binding. Yeah, some conventions here in terms of demolition, but Revit will do that for you. And yes, yes. Was that? Oh, the attendance day?
Yes, that is different.
Yes.
So I think planning approval is not amongst the list.
No.
And there are many there are 2-3 more subjects which I'm taking, but it's not listed over there. So I don't have to go through the procedure.
No, you don't. So are you doing any subjects externally?
Yeah, digital drawing as well as auto.
Okay, and neither of those have attendance day requirements?
No.
Yep.
I didn't see anything.
Yeah. So you can plug away on your planning approval stuff that day. Dimensions. Yeah, certainly. You know, dimensions with ticks and dimensions with arrows to show, you know, from one point to another. Yes, very, very standard. And look, and you can set up your own dimension styles, but Revit will have those dimension styles for you in the model. So typically, you don't need to worry about.
What's a controlling zone?
Controlling zone, I don't actually know.
Yeah.
So chances are that's not going to be applicable to you. Yeah, hopefully it's not going to be, because I've not come across controlling zone.
How long have you been in the industry?
What's that?
How long have you been in the industry?
About 8 years.
8 years, you know what? That's fine. I don't need to know.
Yeah. Look, that's pretty much pretty much it for important things from AS 1100. Look, have a look through, but you know, it's a non-binding standard. There are rules we have to agree upon. Actually, no, let's have a look at cross-referencing of drawings, page 20. Appendix B, rightio. Section 3. Yeah. Find what page Appendix B is on, because cross-referencing is is important. Appendix B, so 43. So in cross-referencing between drawings, what you want to be doing is you want to be saying, this is what my drawing or detail number is, and this is the page that it's located on. If it's located on exactly the same page, we put a dash in here. So Revit does that for you automatically, doesn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Still check that it's doing it correctly, because with these things you do them automatically for you. Sometimes sometimes it'll create errors for you. So you still have to check everything. But that's the most important thing, to say this drawing in this location, and that's the same for whether it's a detail. So a detail, we have a line coming off here and we circle the area we're doing a detail of. If it's an elevation, we have a little arrow on top of it to show that that elevation on this page. Or if it's a section, then we have a section mark, and once again we have this section on this page.
Right, so the sections are at the bottom, the sections at the bottom. So,
well, section, though, you still nominate which section it is and then what page it is.
all right.
So, yeah, so that page is always on the bottom and your drawing reference is always on the top.
Drawing reference on top.
Page is on the bottom. What I've typically done is whenever I'm doing sections, I call sections A, B, or C. So I use letters for sections. I use SD1 or PD1 for section detail, right? So SD and then a number for the section, or PD for plan detail. Sometimes you'll have CD as well for construction detail, but you say, you do that and you have, so your details are numerical.
Mm-hmm.
Your sections are letters, and then your elevations, I typically do them as 1, 2, and 3, 4. And we mentioned that before. Because that way, if you keep your sections as letters and your details as numbers, then they don't get confused between each other. That way, people they don't see a thing and think that's a detail rather than a section that's being called out. Helps create that differentiation. But yeah, Revit does a lot of this for you. Actually, is it? Yeah. Also, another thing, you're not going to come across that now, but you'll come across in Project 3 are grids. So grids are also important because with a small house, we just dimension from the outside, or we dimension from somewhere and we get there. With larger construction, typically we have what is called a grid type-based structure of a building. Like with this building here, have a look at these columns. These columns in a line like this, they're in this grid format, and we'll see that there's a grid format to this building. Certainly, if we stripped away all the new architecture or the new building in this building, and we saw those massive big stanchions from our portal frames out there like that, they would all be in a grid. And they'd probably be in a grid in increments of 3 meters as well, typically, or increments of 600 millimeters. But they would all be in a grid just like this, and then so we dimension off those grid lines to where we want to be doing. Let's say we're cutting in a pit here for some, for a lift or something like that. You dimension off that grid. So Project 3 you'll be using grid. That's AS 1100. Yeah, I won't go through the slides for the working drawing basics, so you can go through those yourself. what we will have a quick look at revision clouds. So what you're going to have to do for various sections throughout is do revision clouds. We do a revision cloud whenever a set of drawings has gone to somebody else, and then we're making changes after that. If I'm making changes on a day-to-day basis, or even if I'm talking to the client about something and the client says, oh no, yeah, we want, you know, different type of timber on our deck, I don't do a revision cloud for that, because that set of drawings has not gone to any other person that's going to be relying on that set of drawings for construction. But if I send something to council and then council send it back and they say, hey, that septic system has to be 2.5 metres away from the house or whatever, then I make those changes and then I do a revision cloud around that, and then I put in the revision notes there saying revision A, septic moved and this date. Then, you know, and then on the new set of plans I send to them, I have revision cloud around what has changed and that reference to say this is revision number 3 for that revision. So whenever you see that on a set of drawings, that means that section has been revised at some point in time. Yeah, I probably should have.
Is that something where once you'd actually sort of like done all of your consultation and doing in your drawing, then if you came down to a final document, you would actually save it as a new document, a version 2, and just take out those revision clouds for submission?
No, you don't. Typically, you don't want to do that because there are drawing sets out there that have the old drawings on them. So if you've sent,
Right, I've got it. So you would actually just publish that next version with the revision cloud embedded.
Yes.
So right, that would only come after. So for instance, like I'm in the process of developing the application or developing a plan that we are going to put to council, not
yes. Yep.
So I've got a series of revisions and I've put them in a series of revision clouds based upon, you know, sort of like the stage that I'm in. I get to the end of that. Do I submit to council with those revision clouds showing? Or do I submit to council without those revision clouds?
You submit to council without those revision clouds
That's
showing,
right,
because they've never gone to council before.
Right, so then you'll be hiding those.
Oh yeah, you won't even be doing them.
Right.
Because if you're mucking around making changes, etc.,
Right.
and it's all in office, if it's only you or between you and the client,
Right.
no revision clouds required. If it's between you and other people in your office, no revision clouds required. If it's going outside your office to another consultant or something like that, and changes are made,
Where you want
yes,
Right.
yeah.
But once I send that.
But also if you send something to a consultant, they look at something and provide advice, and then that is the last time that they are going to be having anything to do with the project. Once again, that is like an in-house change as well.
I suppose that's what I was asking. So you would actually probably be managing that through having revision clouds. But you would actually have a final version, which was the submittable version, where you'd have actually hidden all of those revision clouds, and it went to council without them. So that then becomes the version that council's approved, clean.
Yes.
And they don't need to know about your to's and fro's, so you've taken that out.
Yeah.
But then if they come back with queries, at that point, V 2.1 or VF becomes VF 1.1. Yeah.
Yes. And then if you make changes after it's gone to council, then revision clouds.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
I know.
Yep. So that's revision clouds and revision schedule. So building approval students definitely have to do those. And Yeah, look, I think there's instruction here on how to do revision clouds on Revit somewhere down there, but I think it's super simple. Is it super simple?
I don't think that we've done it before, but I'll be able to find out.
I know how simple it is to draw them, and then but I'm just not sure about how it references down to that table down the bottom. But yeah,
Yeah. From my experience with this, it is super simple. That nobody's had an issue with it to do revision clouds.
Yeah,
Yep.
when I did working experience at Smith Brothers, all of their anything that was like from an exterior consultant was like the PDFs were actually annotated, and there was revision clouds on just the PDF. So like they would get in a document, and within, I can't remember what the viewer was called, but within this, it was called like Blue something.
Yeah.
Anyway, and yeah, so the clouds were all just like, and annotations were all just over top of PDFs, and they didn't actually do that within
The drawing set.
within Revit itself, because they would like just go through the latest PDF and make the changes and cross it off on the PDF as they're done. And then once they're all done, it's sort of just done and gone, like, and there's no real record of that.
Yes, that
So,
interaction. Yeah.
So I guess this method is to keep a record of it there, that this is what it was and this is why it's changed. Because so like at Smith Brothers there, when stuff is getting sent out and you're getting advice back, they were using revision clouds as that way to communicate. But you don't embed all that stuff in your drawing set to then go to council, because council don't need to see all that process. It's never been to them. It's just been to your consultants, etc. And there's not a drawing set floating around out there that might be relied upon for construction. But once you start sending stuff to council, well then council do need to know about any revisions. Because if you send something to council and they say no, you need to make these changes, and then you make some changes and you send it back, if you don't put a revision cloud on there to show your changes, it might get picked up by somebody else at council.
It could also be something like footings.
And they'll go, what was that change? I don't what? So the revision cloud helps them understand what has been changed, but it identifies what has been changed and it creates a record of now this has been changed. So just in case somebody at council was to rely on an older document or something, you've got this one that says this has been changed.
But it's more so just for the communication within the same consultant back and forth to keep that record there, and then when it moves on to the next step, that is basically with council acceptance, because that's the last step, but it's basically wiped away.
No, that is a good way to see it. But what you don't want happening is that there's a drawing set, or particularly after council, you don't want there to be a drawing set which has gone out to builders and for tendering and things like that, and then there's been a revision, and the people that won that tender have got their original set of drawings, and I guess that's more to do with communication, but they want to know that if they're on site with a set of drawings that have revision clouds on it, that's something they have to check, make sure that's what they've planned for.
Because my thinking would be something around footings, where I've allocated for 500 deep footings, but I've allocated for deep footings, but maybe it's only 500, so it's not a very deep footing. So if you had an excavation to look at that, and then you found that your footings were shallower, is that something that would be considered in terms of revision clouds?
Well, that's no.
Because I haven't got the engineer's drawings yet on the footings. I've just got what I've got, and I'm asking for approval for that house and that thing, or getting engineers.
Yes. You're not sending it to council with the incorrect footing stuff, so you won't employ a revision cloud there. Could I just quickly, and that reminds me, did I send out the correct footing report to everybody? You received it?
Yeah, I received something.
Okay, so I did, So that's, no, I'm just making sure that I've actually sent that in. Yeah, yeah, good. So everybody has the correct footings report. You should know from that what size your footing beams are, what depth they are, everything.
The only other thing was the correct certificate.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, I'll explain that. Look, just use the old one. That was great. People that noticed that the postcode on that was wrong. Let's just use the old one.
Okay.
If you don't mind. Yeah, because otherwise I've got to go spend time
we
fudging stuff.
don't want a real one, we just want to,
Yeah,
we won't get
yeah.
marked out using a bad one.
No. There's no, yeah, so the only thing that's going out to you is the correct footings report. So, yeah. Right. Annotations and leaders. Oh, gee, that's all a bit blurry, isn't it? Gee, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's not. Okay. I'll just point out a few quick things. So we can see our cross-referencing between drawings. So box got detail. So number 1, that's the page that it was originally on. So that's where that detail comes from. So when we're doing it, a detail, is that detail drawn from? No. So we've only got sections here, but when we're doing a detail, we'll use the detail marker, not the section, but the detail marker, have a line and then have a circle or square around what we're doing the detail on. Right? Then when we get to the page at which it's expressed, then we'll have that same number as we have at the top of that one, but we'll refer back to the page to which that detail was originally identified. And then, obviously say what it is and the scale. With your leaders, it's really good practice to keep your leaders either to right angle or to straight, if you can. Not always possible. So if you do leaders on an angle, and I know this sounds really pedantic, but trust me, it makes a good visual difference to a set of drawings if you keep the angle of your leaders all the same. Because you'll see it when you've got a set of drawings where leaders are on varying angles, it just looks like a dog's breakfast.
I mean, I'm looking at that side and I'm seeing a dog's breakfast actually, because it's like
Good.
not.
Good. But yeah, and you're a bit like my boss that I had for drafting. Like I had Barney's with him over leaders at 45 degrees. Like he was like straight or right down. I was like, 45 degrees. Yeah. So yeah, I think it makes a difference. It makes a difference to the visual aspect of drawings, and you might, and like on the face of it, that sounds unimportant, but it actually is important. Like strangely enough, that it really helps out if your drawings look really professional. If your drawings are really neat, ordered really nicely, and look the business, they don't get pulled apart. Like it makes things easier for you and easier for your client. So
literally try and keep it to no more than 2 angles.
Yeah.
Straight or no more than 2 angles.
Yeah. So if you're putting things on an angle, match the angle. Yeah, I think that the whole aesthetics around drawings is actually really important, because people judge you based on appearances. Keep all your text in line like that. Once again, another thing that keeps it all looking neat. If your text is all over the place, it looks really messy. Line weights and line thicknesses. So with Revit, you've got thick, medium, and thin lines. That's looking at it simply. There's actually the possibility for you to go in there and play with it and nominate whatever line thickness you want for certain things. For those of us who grew up drawing by hand or drawing on AutoCAD, intuitively or innately you get a really good idea of what line thickness you should use for what element. People who've grown up using Revit don't quite get that that thing. I think that is one of the drawbacks of Revit, in that it doesn't teach people to think about those line weights. I guess it's a little bit beyond the scope of what I should be teaching or expecting in here. But if you get your head around line weights well, once again it really helps with your drawing presentation. So the rules about line weights are that if you're cutting through something, so if our section is cutting through something, we do that as a bolder line. If it's concrete, it's heavier than if it's steel, or light gauge steel. And if it's light gauge steel, it's heavier than if it is timber. So think about sort of the strength and the weight of your elements and use line weights accordingly. If it's in the foreground, it's a thicker line. If it's in the background, it's a lighter line. So in terms of line weights that I would use for drawing like this, I'd use 0.5 or 0.35 for that concrete panel. I'd use 0.09 for that sheeting there. I'd use 0.25 for that stud there. I'd use 0.3 or 0.35 for cutting through my stud, and 0.18 for that X to show that. I'd use 0.09 once again for that flashing in the background. I'd use 0.25 for where I'm cutting through the flashing. 0.25 for that timber work there. 0.35 for cutting through that batten, or 0.3. 0.25 for cutting through my sheeting. There's something that comes with time and a bit of practice. But I think if you want to dress up your drawings and make your drawings really pop, or look really nice, that's a way of doing it, is to think about your line weights and experiment with line weights. But just remember that heavy elements that are cut through, thicker lines around your 0.5, elements that are in the distance, really thin lines like 0.09. And then your other bits, something in between those. 0.25, 0.18 and 0.35 we use a lot. Do you guys, do you have any, exposure to line weights at all in drawing? Just briefly?
Yeah. Not really. I don't even think I know how to go in and Revit and change it myself.
Yeah, I don't know how to change it in Revit either.
You'd have to,
But it
because
can be
everything is
done
really preset, like to what you're putting in it, preset its thickness, so you have to go in and add new line types.
Yeah,
create new line types to do your own thing.
Okay.
But I always thought the fact that Revit has so many more ways of showing information, that the line type, to me, which I think now maybe is a little bit wrong, but the line type, because obviously the line, in older style of drawing, the line type was a way to show information without cluttering the page. But now that Revit can, in a smarter way, show more different types of information, that it's sort of overridden the necessity of line types to be so specific.
It has. Yeah, so it has to a degree.
Yeah.
Because yes, that can be shown, but what it's never a full replacement for is just the simple aesthetic value of drawing, and that intuitively when you look at something, that you see the depth, or you intuitively understand whether something's in the background or close up.
Yeah.
So it's like,
that makes a big difference, because if you actually get that visuality and that 3D from it, you can actually work out what the hell they're talking about. I mean, and we've got the different textures that tell us very immediately that's concrete, that's insulation, that crossover, that's a bit of timber. But in a bigger sense, like seeing that grey stuff that is hanging off, well, obviously that's your suspended ceiling, and it looks like you've got another suspension for the ceiling lining. That's dropped down from that suspension. And I mean, those are things that I'm just picking up from looking at that out here without words anything. you've got a suspended ceiling and you've got some sort of lining on that suspended ceiling. So the first one, the top one, has got some sort of load bearing capacity, I would suspect.
Yeah.
You know, and being able to just say that from that makes a huge difference.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and intuitively you can know that this stuff is in the background. Yeah. You see this down. What's happening with this downpipe here? It's in dotted lines. What's that about?
It's penetrating through.
Yeah. Yeah. And to me, I feel that's intuitive. When I see something in a dashed line, it tells me there's something here you need to know about, but you can't actually see it. It's in behind there.
Yeah.
Intuitively, a dashed line tells me that. Tells me that there's something there you need to know about, but you can't see it. And I encourage you to, if you've got the time, like it's not a requirement of this subject or this course that you go doing things with line weights and playing with line weights. Using those 3 line weights that are set up in the drawing are suitable. All right. The only thing I would ask you to do is when you're doing a section and you're showing ground, thicken up that line. Make that a 0.7 or so to show the earth. That is one thing that makes a big difference.
Do you have any examples of a site analysis for locality plan?
Yes.
Unless you have other stuff to continue to go through.
No. No. Well, let's have a look. So annotation. So the next thing was looking at plans. So actually, probably the next thing I should be looking at is a site analysis plan.
Wow.
Yeah. so it's not bad timing really. Let's have a look. So now on that list, I haven't broken down a site analysis plan. So we'll have a look at it on and this one here, and I'll shrink that out a bit so it fits on the page, but try not to take it too far. So there.
Do you want a separate site location and site analysis? Because I mean, given the information that you've got on them, you could well be just using the same. I mean, it's not a huge building. I mean, if it was a huge building, maybe you need that 1 to 200, 1 to 500 thing. But because it's not a huge building, it can be on the same plan as the site plan. And from my point of view, that's kind of easy because it's like you're not putting much over there.
Oh, no, I do want a different site analysis plan than the site plan.
Right, okay.
Most definitely. Because you don't want your site plan, you want your site plan to be specific to your project to begin with. There is so much information going on in your site plan that you want that to be specific to your project, and you don't want to be talking about all the stuff that's external to that site as well. Otherwise, your site plan just gets way too busy. And there's a line, there's a point at which you think, yes, it's more practical to break this down into several plans. And trust me, just do the site analysis plan and do the site plan, right? And get to that point and go, oh yeah, I have to. Yeah. So, site analysis plan. So this, I'm expecting for our project, we zoom out just a little bit more. This one, what it's doing is it's showing the neighbouring properties. I would like to actually see the neighbouring property in full. I don't need to see their allotment in full, but I think to see the house in full is a good idea, because who knows if that goes this way and then it heads all the way down there or something where it's chopped off. Because some of that might be important if there's a whole section of their house going down here and you're doing the deck here and it's elevated and it's looking into their place or over their swimming pool or something like that. Council may not allow that. So with your site analysis plan, you're showing your street on there and anything pertinent to do with your street. You're showing your services that come in. So here we go, overhead power line coming in there. We show our driveway crossover and where that's coming in, and other important features such as fencing and the extent of neighbouring buildings. What I would also add to these is I'd give a little bit of information about that. So I see here it says timber house. Well, that's not the most important information to me. What I want to know is that 2-story? What is the ridge height on that. Right? So I'd say 2-story house. Or single-story house. And then, what you're not doing is you're not dimensioning, you're not showing exactly what the dimensions are to their place, because you don't know. You can find out roughly from Google Earth, or SA Map Viewer, but you don't know, so you don't dimension it. You can give some approximates if there's something actually really important about that. But that's pretty much what we'd show on our site analysis plan. With yours as well, you have some vegetation to show. So it's not so much about what the vegetation is doing on our site, but what the vegetation is doing on the street and the neighbours. So that's that's your site analysis plan. Any sort of queries, questions?
With the shadows, does that only have to relate to like our fences and dwelling, or does that also have to relate to trees? Because I'm just not sure how. Yeah. Let's keep it simple. Let's keep it to our fences and our dwelling. Yeah. So because it's going to be quite difficult to estimate heights of trees and all that sort of stuff. So sometimes that's going to be important to you, and you will have to model that on site. That takes time, and it's difficult. Yeah. We can't be that luxurious in this subject. As we're sort of working through this over the weekend, next few days, we come across something and we're like, that seems like a bit important, but a bit like, that's a lot of work. We can almost assume to skip over those things like that because this is just getting the base.
Yes. Yeah. Because we are doing these 3 projects in such a short space of time, we do have to keep it simple, unfortunately. And then right under that, so site plan. I don't encourage always to go putting roofing information on a site plan. I leave it off. Typically what I do is I show the outline of the building and then a dashed outline of the roof on my site plan, and that's it. I might show some indicative wall thickness, or I might have some wall and I'll hatch that wall, but keep it really simple. Because typically you'll produce another roof plan, and you'll do that at 1:100. Your site plan is 1:200, and because you put so much information on your site plan, think about where you can information you might want to put on your site plan, think about where you can have that expressed elsewhere. So I wouldn't put roof information on my site plan. But beyond that, I would have dimensions that are required. I'd put in the vegetation. I would most definitely put in stormwater runs. Council want to see how that water is coming off of your roof and where it's going.
So that's just like us drawing where the overflow pipe would go from our tank, and for us it's just pointing down and then going with the natural topography.
And if you're running it to the back there into that reserve to go into the start of that creek, we'd say that your stormwater to discharge at rear of property to gully, you'd make a note to the effect to say that it avoids any neighbouring properties. Or if it's running to the front there, to the street, we say stormwater to street water table. But council,
going to the rear of the property, like once you get the pipe to your fence line, it just goes with the natural ground line. That's interesting.
Just discharge to rear.
Discharge to reserve at rear. And you might want to say measures taken to ensure erosion.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking about.
It's always going to be far simpler if you run your stormwater to the street water table, because then council know, stormwater to street water table, it's downpipe popping out at the gutter. And so they won't expect it. If you're just discharging to to the rear, they'll probably want to do a site visit and they'll want to assess
So
the impact of that.
what level is too low to be able to go to the street water table? Like what, is it the gutter line that affects it?
Yeah, so it's the gutter line, but you'd want to set it about 500 mil below the gutter line because you need some fall.
Yeah.
You need 1 in 54 or something, 1.65 degrees or something
Yeah.
from your gutter to
I mean,
there.
my take on it would be that it's actually a terrible waste to be discharging it to the gutter when it can go to a natural watercourse. You know, if you've got a gully down the back and it is actually a natural watercourse, you may as well be discharging it to a natural watercourse that they don't have to manage.
Yeah, council would probably see it like that as well. Yeah. So definitely on your site plan, stormwater. It has to be there because
Site plan
Because-
or location plan?
site plan.
Site plan.
Because site plan, like locality plan, that's talking about your building in its context of its area. Whereas site plan, that's more about what works you're doing there, and then the works you're doing that you're expressing the interaction of those works with
Right,
what's
site plan, right.
what's happening outside. So driveway, you have that, and you'll show your driveway crossover once again on your site plan. Other things on your site plan, you show landscaping, you show contours, you'll definitely show a north arrow, you'll show fencing, so your dimension from the edge as well, and that's about it. I can't, I'll go to my list of site plans, so that's all I can. Oh, we don't have a list for site plans, right? So, yeah, so that's it. So, north arrow, stormwater definitely, driveways, landscaping. Oh, well, landscaping and landscaping surfaces. Yeah, and outline of dwellings dimensions. So keep looking at, yeah, oh no, I'll go with this and so have a look at floor plans. So floor plans, we're showing walls, wall thicknesses and columns, windows and doors, possibly furniture and fixtures, but for planning approval, I'd say not. Right, so for the bulk of your simple residential developments, don't show your furniture inside there. So leave that out. You'll show where you're doing any section through the building. So you drop your section onto your floor plan, and that will, in Revit, that'll produce your section. Yeah, so cross section or any other additional sections. You'll identify where plan details are coming from. So you'll have markers to show there's a plan detail coming out of there. Or you may have reference to show where there's a part plan happening elsewhere on another sheet. So you might identify that as you would a detail. Make sense? Yeah. So walls, once again, line weights, if you're interested, 0.35 on the outside, 0.25. So this is masonry, 0.35 on the outside, 0.25 on the inside as you're looking down on that wall, and then 0.18 for your framing. Then, if you're doing masonry, you do hatching to your masonry. Now that's probably, yeah, you can get indications of your hatching from Australian Standard 1100.3. Currently with this first project, you're doing fibre cement sheeting to the outside. Oh, you won't be hatching your walls at all. But, and I'm getting a little bit of familiar, you guys have dealt with hatching in working drawings? Yeah, and so you know the hatching for brickwork, so double line, double line, double line.
Yep.
And masonry, line, like the concrete blocks. Great, cool. So you'll be showing columns, doors, windows. With a residential floor plan, you won't be showing your downpipes on a floor plan. But for commercial, where they're typically embedded in there, you will show your downpipes. For residential, you typically show your downpipes on your roof plan. So you do a roof plan and then gutters and your downpipes there. On your site plan also, you show where your downpipes are going and interacting with stormwater as well. Cross-referencing, we've covered that a little bit already. So where we're doing our section, so section D on this drawing here, and it's our grid lines we went through before. Dimensions, we dimension elements inside the building in our first line of dimensions and work our way out with our lines of dimensions. See if I can find a good example on there where I get to a dimensioned floor plan eventually. I think I'll rather catch up with that. Okay, not finding a dimensioned floor plan there readily to show the layering of our dimensions. Yeah.
How do we do the grid reference then? Is it easy enough to do?
Yeah, well you'll be dealing with grid references in project 3.
Right.
So until then, don't worry about it. I was hoping to find a good floor plan with showing the layering of dimensions, but there we go. So see how we've got several lines of dimensions happening? So this is just an example. We've got our screen on top of that. But here we can see it here, that 1070, that relates to the length of this wall. Oh, actually, so they've done it differently than what I like to do it. I'll identify that. So they're 240, that relates to their wall width. I would have that 240 in my first line of dimensions and that 1070 in my second line of dimensions, and then my overall dimensions further out. So your dimensions that are earlier on in your line of dimensions relate to things that are closer in. And then you work out from that. I think whatever you do, be consistent. But that for me is more the intuitive way to do it. So if I was dimensioning this up, I'd start dimensioning things along this wall before I dimension that opening and these walls. And I'd be doing those ones before I'd do anything associated with that wall. Does that make sense? Yeah. Is that way you guys do it already anyhow?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Here's a bit of information about line weights. Again, yeah, spoken about that enough. Okay. Other important notes in regards to drawings is try to avoid duplication of information across drawings. So, that's floor plan. So elevations and sections. So your floor plan is all about showing everything that can happen in a horizontal sense. Things you can't express in a floor plan are how high a wall is. Where you could write that in there, but when you do a section or an elevation, you can express how tall things are. So that's the dimensions I would expect on an elevation, is everything I need to know about how tall something is. And you may also have some of that information on a section as well. If something doesn't show in an elevation that relates to height and dimensioning, you'll dimension that in a section as well. Yeah, probably nothing new on that. All of your levels are shown with datum lines, and then the heights of those datum lines. So show down parts where visible. With that ground line, as I mentioned before, that's good to thicken that one up, to make it look solid, to make it stand out. If we're doing a section and we're cutting through earth, if we're showing footings or something like that, you use the earth hatch, and I always rotate that earth hatch at 45 degrees. That's typically what... Yeah.
Sorry. So in our elevations, do we have a line that follows the contour, or is it always just like...
What you're doing a building pad and you're doing retaining walls around it, so don't show any contour of the land.
So as far as the building elevations, just have a flat line.
Yeah. What I've done a fair bit in the past is whenever it's important, I'll show something like this. Have building pad, land, that's cut and fill information, then show, and I'll show something like that in an elevation. So you can see still the land coming and going from that elevation. Or you can show a retaining wall in there, etc. like that. So show that elevation in context, because that enables you to say retaining wall maximum 1 metre height, and allows you to give some information about fill and things like that to the council that might be important. But you don't have to do that for this project. And also with Revit, you take a different approach than what you take with AutoCAD. So I would do that sort of thing in AutoCAD, because then I'm grabbing that and straight away I'm drawing a section for showing that my footings are interacting with natural ground there. And so I'm doing some of that work already. You don't do that, you approach things differently in Revit than you do in AutoCAD. So it always comes back to thinking about what do you need to communicate and why.
Do we actually ever have like a consultation with you as a lecturer, or is it always like, as in?
No, it's always yeah.
But like that covers, as far as like thinking, a week from now, and we've all got our sort of peer checked drawings, then do we have some sort of a meeting with you to look at them and find out what we need to add, like, or? You
do, but that's as me being a building designer.
Yeah. Because that's the only thing I was thinking. I was like, God, I just want a meeting with my lecturer, not and ask and see how it's going as far as the TAFE requirements, rather than all this. I guess it's either I get the same result by the end of it.
Yeah, I know, because it's all based around how you have to be assessed.
Yeah.
So you have to be assessed interacting with clients and consultants, and
Yeah.
And if you play those interactions right, you can get all the feedback you want.
Yeah, there's a limited amount of time. But no, just stick your hand up. And say, how is this? And
Okay, those are local.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
That would be.
Yes. Sorry. I mucked that up. So I said last week 12, didn't I?
12
Did I say 12 or something?
Yeah, I think that was.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
So it's 12:30, is it?
Yeah. Although it worked so much better for you being 12, didn't it?
Well, yeah, I can make it.
Yeah.
It's just because I thought it would end at 3, so I had an appointment or something.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all.
Yeah. Sorry for messing that up. Yeah.
See you
All right.
next week.
Cool. See you next. See you next Wednesday.
Is there a lot to go?
Well, actually, no, we don't. Look, we don't need to keep rabbiting on. Actually,
I'm thinking that what we need to do is we need to make mistakes, and you
need to get into it.
We do our very best to get it right. We make the mistakes, and then we get the sort of ouch factor, and we actually learn, as opposed to you sort of like. And I'm probably overloading you a little bit as well. I don't know that you're overloading it, but or us, but I think failing is actually the best way of learning
Mhm.
because you have to remember.
I think
Yeah.
I'm probably a bit less worried about the actual drawing side of things and more so the information like that I need to be showing and like where I'm getting that from and the right information and like
Yeah.
I've got this
Yeah.
thing like do I need to be showing information on this? Do I need to look more into this? Yeah. But
Yeah.
once again, that's sort of a thing of just doing what you reckon and then gauging from there what you need to add. Or,
Yeah, and that you'll get through the consult with the designer and just by talking to me and through the peer checking.
Yeah.
So for this first project, peer checking is going to be fairly simple because you're all sort of at that same point. But you find project 2, project 3, some people get really pushing ahead with developing general notes and all this sort of stuff. And that way, that can also be a really good guide to you as to what you're including. So I'll leave it at that then. So there's plenty of other things on here for you to go through if you wish, as in what information including title blocks, etc. Go through that. Yeah, get stuck into drawings because you're probably just going to refer back to these things when you're actually at those elements anyhow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll leave it at that. And yeah, so best of luck with getting all the drawings done. Send them to me for peer checking, and I'll swap things around to keep you guys moving along.